Today's episode is brought to you in part by Liquid Death. Murder your thirst with 100% mountain water from the Alps, made by nature, not in a lab. Available both still or sparkling, Liquid Death is infinitely recyclable in tall boy cans, just like beer, and never in plastic. Get a case delivered to your house today at unitedwedraink.com/liquiddeath, and you can get a free koozie pack by using the code FREEKOOZIEAF. That's FREEKOOZIEAF at checkout. Just add any Liquid Death koozie pack to your cart, use the code, buy some water, and get these sweet-ass koozies for free with your thirst-murdering water. From Liquid Death at unitedwedrink.com/liquiddeath. Now enjoy the show. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast that doesn't care about your white IPA or winter IPA or whatever the fuck we're calling it, unless that winter IPA is Celebration. Welcome to United We Drink, right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I'm inching closer and closer to daddyhood, and it's equally exciting and terrifying. Who the fuck am I kidding? It's terrifying. Terrifying is winning all the way right now. With me, as always, is someone who would give out scoops of buffalo chicken dip for Halloween treats if it were socially acceptable. It's Joel Codner.
First, let me say I like how Mike has resorted to stealing my tweets for the show intros.
What?
I said that exact same shit earlier about white IPAs and Celebration.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Is that like a little subliminal thing planted in your head now?
Yeah, probably.
And buffalo chicken dip's a little too expensive to hand out for Halloween. Plus, it burns the kids' hands when I scoop it into their open paws.
You got to learn somehow, and apparently you've done the research.
Well, if I just throw the scoop in their bag or bucket or whatever they're carrying, it tends to melt the chocolates and other candies. I usually just give them edibles, like all the news outlets tell everyone that that's what's happening, because, you know,
people would just
give away drugs.
Also with us is a man who gives away more cheap plugs on this podcast than a hardware store. It's Kevin Abbott.
Honor and a privilege, gentlemen, to be with you, as it always is, to discuss a little bit of craft beer with you guys every other week, I should say.
I love talking about deer, whether it be macro or micro.
Absolutely.
All right. So, before we get into the main topic, we were going over this a little bit before the show, but I guess word is that Boston Beer is dumping a whole bunch of Truly, so I guess we were right. Seltzer's dead, right, guys? Mark one up as cha-ching for United We Drink.
One more for the good guys.
Eat it, Bill Parmigiano.
There's this tweet going around. I don't recall who it is. I'm trying to look it up right now. But there's this guy who's like, I can't stop thinking about how Boston Beer is dumping millions of cans during a can shortage. And it's like, really? You can't stop thinking about it? Like, I obsess over things and I still take breaks from thinking about them. Like, calm down with the hyperbole, all right? Like,
he's boiling water for his blue box mac and cheese, and he can't stop thinking about those cans. All those slim cans.
First world problems, gentlemen. First world problems.
That's what this podcast is all about. But gentlemen, what are we drinking on this fine Wednesday evening before the great eve of Halloween?
Do you want to start to one of us,
Sure,
or you want
Joel,
us to just
go
talk?
first.
We'll just talk over each other.
Yes.
As always, I've got my Polar canned flaccid seltzer cranberry lime flavor. I am actually double fisting. I've got 2 of them. I'm just kind of tired of alcohol, and Polar has been BOGO all week, all month at Publix. Today's the last day, so hope you got yours. Oh, I see Kevin has the... I'll let him explain it, and then I'll shit on it.
I've got the original. I've got the clear Polar. I've also have a grapefruit as well in reserve because I tend to get parched while podcasting, while using my voice, my instrument. I also have an Infinite Enigma from a little brewery with the initials BOM somewhere in there. And it's a nice triple IPA that I am enjoying. I've not been drinking as much beer recently, trying to lose a few pounds, and I'm really enjoying this one because I've missed it. I haven't had one of these in a couple weeks.
I am having a Doppelbock from a little brewery called Copperpoint. That beer is called Goderator. I also have a tall boy of Liquid Death to murder some of my thirst. And then I have a backup of Green Benches Fest beer that I have just absolutely loved this Oktoberfest season. I think I've almost had a case worth.
So, Mike, how much DDT is in Liquid Death? Is it a lot? Do they list it on the can?
There is a Jake the Snake Roberts amount in there.
I thought it was Roundup.
Yeah, not the DDT I was going with. That's okay. We did have a professional wrestling
you and I
podcast
used to
at
do
some
a
point.
wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
So that's just where my mind went.
You slipped into old habits there, didn't you?
Yeah, DDTs, they become a transitional thing instead of a finisher now.
And now they're transitional on podcasts. Hey-o.
All right, so the main topic that we are going to talk about for this episode, and very timely, is seasonal creep. We just missed the whole everyone complaining about pumpkin beers coming out too early. We're actually smack dab in the middle of prime pumpkin beer season, but we are now, for probably a couple weeks, have started to see Christmas beers starting to hit the shelves. And without fail, fall beers, winter beers are always going to get people all riled up as to when they're coming out. They're coming out too early. It's too early for this. It's too early for that. So I figure, let's talk about this thing. I feel like we've never really hit on it in depth, maybe just in passing or on like a news article here and there. So let's talk about this. How do you guys see seasonal creep? Is it overblown? Is it a big issue that people are putting out beers way before their time? Do you practice it? Do you think that you have to practice it because of being forced into doing it? There's many different ways, but for this, let's start with Kevin, because I think Kevin probably of us has to deal with some of this, and scheduling and releasing being a lot on the sales side of things. So how do you see seasonal creep from your perspective?
I mean, at the risk of just being another person saying exactly what you're talking about and maybe overhyping or being too frustrated about what's going on and seasonal creep and how annoying it is, I personally, when I go into a Target to buy Halloween decorations the first week of October and there's none left, and Christmas decorations are out, personally, that pisses me off. It's very annoying to me, right? As a brewery, that makes a Christmas beer, the fact that if I don't get my Christmas beer on the shelves the first week of November, by the way, when I get my Christmas beer on the shelves the first week of November, I'm already late.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're late to the party. We get added to the seasonal end caps instead of leading off with them. That annoys me. Now, part of this is just me being stuck in my ways. I could easily release that beer in October. I just don't want to. It gives me revulsion to have to do it. But I've been thinking about this more and more, and as you put this show topic out for us to think about and ponder beforehand, I was listening to a George Carlin bit, and Carlin was talking about how when it comes to the government, when it comes to the people in elected office, don't blame the people in government because it's the public that sucks.
Oh
it's
my
the
God.
public that's to blame. It's the frickin' public. And you know what? In this situation, I blame the public because if that pumpkin beer is on the shelf on November 1st, people don't buy it. And if that Christmas beer is on the shelf December 27th, the people don't buy it. So if you're a retailer and you've got a ticking time bomb on your shelf that is garbage after a certain date, why wouldn't you want to have the maximum selling time in? You want to have a month to sell it. You want to sell as much as possible. They're popular. Why wouldn't you want to have the maximum selling time and also have it completely gone before the season comes through? And I'm saying a little bit tongue-in-cheek with the public situation, but it's everybody. The entire society is doing this. Beer is just reflecting what society is doing. And if we as a buying public would go in there and go, man, I want to drink my Christmas beer in January. There ain't nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with drinking a pumpkin beer for Thanksgiving. We got pumpkin pie there, right? We got sweet potatoes. So that's my take on it as a whole.
And, talking about the Christmas beer that you have, I feel like Christmas beers, winter beers even, probably have the shortest end of the stick when it comes to seasonal beers, because people are always like, I don't want to think about Christmas until Thanksgiving's over. At that point, you have 1 month before Christmas. And as you said, the day after Christmas, no one cares about Christmas beers anymore. So you're already playing behind on that whole thing. And this is a winter seasonal thing. Christmas is only 4 days into winter, like technically, when you think about it. So the winter beers have always been this weird section because people are still not necessarily over pumpkin beers until around Thanksgiving. And then they're like, all right, now throw me some Christmas stuff, which you only have 1 month for before it's not relevant. And people have been trying to make like more generic winter like beers and not referencing Christmas because it gives you a little bit more shelf life. Not necessarily for quality purposes, but just for brand purposes. And that you're right with, like, you kind of should bring out that beer a little bit earlier than what you are, but you got to play with a little bit of what you want and what the public wants, and that can make it difficult. Joel, you're very opinionated about things.
Or Kevin
so
would
I've
say,
heard.
I have a fundamental problem with things.
Where are you at with the whole seasonal creep thing?
Well, first, I think it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing. Like, I don't really know when it started, and I don't know why, and it just seems like everybody kind of fell into it, and the cycle just repeats every year. Being not much of a beer shopper myself lately, I don't get too worked up about it, but I do enjoy watching everybody bitch and complain on Twitter. I think the season that we're technically in now, which is fall, and we've seen fall beers come out in, late July. I think when it comes to the fall beers, it's the more vocal of the seasons that people get about this. I think it's a double-edged sword with pumpkin because you have people just shitting all over the pumpkin style itself, plus the fact that it's coming out too early anyway. So it feels like there's more backlash against this particular season. And fortunately, what I have seen is a lot of people embracing lager styles and classic styles, German beers lately. Seems like lagers are this big trend now. And so there seems to be the embrace of that on the other end of the spectrum. Like, people are going for the Fest beers and the Marzens. I think you said I am opinionated or talk shit or something. I will say there is a bit of an irony of beers being on shelves too early alongside the rest of the beers that are there all the time that have been there on shelves too long. I don't see it as much of a problem in other seasons. I don't see people freaking out. Someone might tweet, it's fucking not winter yet. But, I mean, people are still buying the winter beers early because they tend to be, either like some sort of winter lager or that's very light and approachable, or it's the
celebration.
Right, which I can't wait to get. And completely contradicting myself when I said when I first started about not wanting to drink so much. I can't wait to get that shit. But I don't see anyone complaining about like Summerfest. I think spring and summer kind of blend into each other. Winter, you also have a lot of beers that are have a longer shelf life. They are beers you can lay down and enjoy any time of the year. Imperial stouts, winter warmers, things like that might be a little too hot to enjoy during the winter. So I think when we get into seasonal creep, it's more about fall and pumpkin and not so much the other. And look, seasonal creep also is reflected in other products. I mean, December 26th, Walgreens has all the fucking Christmas shit on clearance, and Valentine's Day stuff is already being put out. I'm having a hard time finding any more Halloween decorations, even though I know we're only a few days out. It still kind of feels like they got rid of that shit from stores pretty early. All these things come out early, and it's just this cycle we keep repeating. I'm not as vocal or care about it as much as most other people these days.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned there, Joel. A couple things. One, I've always had an issue with the idea of seasonal beers in this idea that, well, it's a stout, and stouts have to come out in the winter. In Florida, it's about 10-degree difference between the winter and the summer during the days. Sometimes it's a little bit lower. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do get down to the 50s some days. But it's basically hot 10 months out of the year. But we have this magical thing called air conditioning. And every one of our houses is 73 degrees at all times. So drinking a stout in July or drinking a stout in December in your house is essentially the exact same thing. And I come from Michigan, where the seasons are much more disparate. But even then, drinking a stout in July in Michigan is just enjoyable as drinking a stout in December in Michigan. I think that this idea that there are certain styles that work well with the season, the Celebration is a perfect example. It's an IPA.
Yeah.
It's just labeled as a winter beer. And there are tons, the Marzen style, which is, a malty lager, but in no way heavy or robust or warming. I mean, all these beers come out of the fridge, for crying out loud, unless you got one of those beers that that's flat and you have to warm it up in a saucepan. There's not a lot of beers out there that people are buying commercially like that. So I think the seasonal aspect of things is a little bit of like mass hypnosis that we've told ourselves. And when we first started Barrel of Monks, the guys were like, we need to start selling beer to Colorado, because they're really going to love our quad, because they want big, robust beers because it's cold up in the mountains. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a thing that might be true, but in practice, I think they're probably drinking just as many lockers, right? And those mountain cabins.
Because Coors is cold as the Rockies, and people like to drink that.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of a mass hypnosis that we've done on the populace. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is just so brilliant, is when it comes to the seasonal beers, and you mentioned the fact that like Valentine's Day and creep with that. Well, there's no real Valentine's Day beers, right? The two kind of beers we really have that most people put out are the fall and the winter beers. And it's funny that those are the beers that people are worried about dates on. No one's worried about dates on anything else. But they're going to really, really be sticklers for these things because we put bright flashing lights and we named them things that are seasonal. And once people have dealt with Christmas from, mid-October through late December, they don't want anything to do with Christmas anymore. So they're not as likely to enjoy one of our Father Christmas 750s in January and February. But they're certainly able to go out there and buy a 9-month-old IPA single bottle that's been sitting on a Total Wine shelf and go, man, this beer's great. When we know that it's not. So
only 9 months?
We've
Shots fired, Ed Roberts.
We've put a blinking light on the front of these things and said these are only really good at this time of year, and the people responded and said, okay, I guess that's the case.
One thing though that this reminds me of is saying how long a beer is good for in these seasonal aspects. I remember a couple years ago buying the Sam Adams Summer Variety Pack and it having printed right on the case, best by August 13th, which is still in fucking summer. And you're saying that this date code on this is good until still in summer for your Summer Variety Pack. And I know that Sam are probably one of the big offenders, Boston Beer, for this type of behavior. And maybe I haven't bought a variety pack in probably over a year at this point. It used to be a thing that I always got every season's variety pack. But they were doing that. They were coming out with these things super quick, super early. And it's, you know what, I did buy last year's Christmas winter one because who can't turn down or who can turn down old Fezziwig?
I was going to say old Fezziwig, man.
Yeah.
Love me some Fezziwig.
But another big offender to this whole thing that, and yeah, I'm calling people out because they tried to change their way that they were with this was Shipyard with Pumpkinhead. Back in 2018, they made a marketing push to be like, look, we know that we have been bad at this, but we're putting an end to seasonal creep. We're not going to release Pumpkinhead until September 1st. No more of this bringing out pumpkin beers before their time. They did that for a year, I think, before the following year, it was like they had a marketing campaign. It's never too early for Pumpkinhead. And they were bringing it out in like the end of June. And the about face is kind of, it pissed me off a bit, but it also made me think, yeah, they realized they missed a lot of sales by not having that beer out sooner because everyone else was putting theirs out at the same time that they originally were. Like, fuck, we missed all these sales on Pumpkinhead. So let's go back to doing what we were doing. Now it's also a seltzer.
I mean, it's business, guys. I mean, you have to, when other people are beating you to the market and occupying those store shelves and filling a niche, everyone's going to want to do that. and you keep pushing it earlier and earlier, and that's why we've seen this happen, and the public has gone along with it. So that's the thing. You can't blame an individual brewery. You can't blame anyone for this. This is a if this is a problem, by the way, and we talked about someone getting upset about the fact that all these cans are being destroyed of Truly Seltzer, and we said first world problems. Well, debating whether or not a pumpkin beer comes out 1 week earlier than it should, that's a little pedantic. We're lucky that that's the thing that we're going to hang our hat on and build an episode around. But
Kevin's really throwing a lot of $5 words out there on this episode.
That one was $5.50, and so because of that, is this a problem? I don't know. I think that when you get in this nuclear arms race to release these beers earlier and earlier, it really ends up being, I don't mind saying this, the lesser examples of these beers end up being the ones that dominate the market. The really mass-produced ones, the ones that can get out there and have the marketing, and some of the really, really great beers kind of fall by the wayside. And that's kind of what bothers me when it comes to that. I think that I was one of the people who loved pumpkin beer. I loved pumpkin cider. I loved pumpkin everything. And I just gave up a few years ago because I found most of them to be pretty terrible. And I think it was because they saw the dollar signs in it and started releasing the beer in mid-July, and I tapped out.
You actually did turn me on to a couple things pumpkin related that I didn't think that I would like, and one of them from Shipyard was the smashed pumpkin. A bigger version, like a bigger beer with more subdued spice character to it. I remember you just years ago going like, this is an underappreciated beer.
I do my best to be diplomatic when talking about other beers and other breweries, because everything is subjective. I can't drink Pumpkinhead. I don't think it's a good beer. I think Smash Pumpkin is amazing, or at least it was 5 years ago when I was drinking it on a regular basis, and I thought it was one of the best examples of the style. So yeah, I wish that was a beer. I don't know if they come out at the exact same time, or if the recipes have changed, or this, that, or the other.
I don't even know if they make it anymore.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Actually, when you say who knows and it's easily Googleable, that's probably a mistake. But
I'm looking it up right now.
There's great examples of the style out there. They're all trying to fight for shelf space, and they're going to do their best to sell as much beer as possible. And I'm in the same boat on my side, so I can appreciate that.
They do still make it. They actually put it out in tall boy cans now. Another one, just real quick, not to be like, hey, remember this? The Woodchuck pumpkin cider, because you said ciders. That was a delicious cider.
Little sweet. Going back and having one a year or so ago, it's a pretty big sugar rush for me. But I did really enjoy that cider at one point. It was the first pumpkin cider that I had.
Yeah.
Joel, what do you think about pumpkin beers in general?
I used to enjoy them. I feel like you and I kind of had a similar experience. It was one of those things that I was turned on to in my early days when I was just, going to beer fests and
7, 8 years old, wide-eyed.
You know what? I actually tried my very first pumpkin beer with Ed Roberts at, it's like a casino beer fest or something like that. I want to say it was in Fort Lauderdale, some kind of Hard Rock or something. And I want to say it was the Shipyard table. And, I was like, wow, that's interesting. That's new. And for a minute at our first brewery, I enjoyed the one we were making there because it was kind of a spiced amber ale. I always thought most of the offerings on shelves were either way too sweet and spiced and cloying and undrinkable, or too pumpkin forward. Because we're really talking about like pumpkin pie spice. We're not, pumpkin is just drab and boring and flavorless. And it just seemed to be like there were two extremes, like undrinkable or bland and undrinkable. And there were a couple throughout the years that I thought were kind of well balanced and right there in the middle, around 5% alcohol or so. But it was just one of those things that I don't know if I really went along with the outrage over seasonal creep, but I just remember just kind of feeling somewhat in agreement. Like, it's too goddamn hot here. It's South Florida. I'm not drinking this shit in July. There's just no way. And I'm not much of a fall person. Like, I want to get right to winter. I like when it's cold. I like the holidays. So, aside from like Halloween with my kids, I really don't give a shit about the fall. But, I couldn't tell you the last time I had a pumpkin beer. I really couldn't.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time I had one was.
It's funny when it comes to, skipping that fall season and going to the Christmas beer, which is, Barrel of Monks does not make a pumpkin beer. We never have. I have made pumpkin beers in the past. I have made a sweet potato beer in the past. One of my co-hosts was the one that suggested that and helped me with that early in the early days of another brewery. Mm-hmm. But I digress.
I want to make it clear that was not me.
So it was funny, Mike, this is totally inside baseball, and I won't go that much farther with it, but we were walking through Publix and saw that beer on the shelf, and my wife went, "Didn't you make that beer?" I said, "I made the first batch, but it was really Mike that came up with the whole concept." But it was funny to see that. Anyway, going into the Christmas beer thing, the thing that bothered me the most is that as a smaller brewery, we want to release a beer in-house first, right? When we release our Father Christmas beer, the preference we have is we do a pre-sale, we do a party, we do a release, you come and get Father Christmas from us. And then the beer goes out to distribution if we have enough, and you sell it on your shelves. But we want to do the real release party of it. We want to get the benefit of that. We want to get to drive the people. So for several years, we did our Christmas party in November. And it sucked because people weren't in the mood to celebrate Christmas yet. I
always enjoyed it.
Well, that's because you were drunk, Mike. That's a different thing. You came for different reasons, to support me and drink alcohol. These other people were saying it was a Christmas party. So a couple years back, we decided, okay, well, we're not going to get that kind of thing. We're going to have to release this beer out to the public. We'll sell it in the tap room. It won't be as big as of a hullabaloo, but it's okay. We'll do a barrel-aged version of it. We'll do a different version of it in December and do our Christmas party then and do some bottle sales there and capitalize on the season and our fan base. And kind of gave away the Father Christmas release to the market instead of having it in our tap room. Once again, very different for bigger breweries, right? We're a local, smaller brewery where this beer is only available in a small footprint, where we're still thinking about tap room first, whereas Shipyard has no concern about any of that. They're just trying to beat everybody to market. And if we were in that position and I was in 4-packs with Father Christmas, trying to sell it all over the country, you'd best believe I'd have that beer out on October 1st. I'd have to. And it wouldn't matter to me because I'd be selling 80 barrels to the market and I'd be selling 5-10 barrels to the people in my tap room. So I think it's also a perspective issue.
Yeah. That is a good point between the whole scalability of the different size of breweries and the planning that goes into that, where you want it all to go. Like, you did Father Christmas all online last year, wasn't it? For your tap room? For bottles, at least.
we kept a very small amount for the tap room. I think it was only like 10 cases, and we sold it out in like 3 days. And we sent all the rest of it to distribution. And people were like, we can't get Father Christmas. I'm like, go to Total Wine. It's right on the shelves. You can pick one up. So it's just a different kind of model. It's funny because the only business that I've known this intimately other than the restaurant business, well, that was it. The restaurant business and the beer business. So I don't know what every other industry is like. But it's funny that I wanted to make the analogy between like the AA baseball clubs in the major leagues, but then I realized that would be really disparaging to like the quality of what breweries like Barrel of Monks puts out, and that would make us look like we're not as good, which I don't think is true. But as far as like penetration and money and ability to do things, it's kind of apt. We're AA ball clubs with a AA salary pool trying to compete with the major league ball club on the shelves at every Publix. And I don't know how many other industries are like that. I don't know how many other industries have to deal with that kind of thing. Maybe all of them, but it seems unique to me from my experiences.
Yeah, that's not a bad analogy. There's probably stuff like that across a ton of different ones, but can't think of an example off the top of my head.
Which means that I'm right and I'm a genius. So
yes,
you can just give me that.
I said it once, and that's you get that for the rest of the year. Congratulations, Kevin. All right. So seasonal creep. I think what we've kind of pinned this down to is it's the consumer's fault. Know what really grinds my gears? You, America. Fuck you.
Well, I think George Carlin said it to put a bow on this. He said it correctly. The public sucks. Fuck hope. I believe that was a direct quote.
Joel, can you confirm that was the quote?
I can confirm it. It's from his closing bit from Back in Town, 1996. And I'm so happy Kevin mentioned that because I had that exact thought, not related to this topic, but to something else as I was driving home a little over an hour ago. So we are like right in tune.
Is that what your last call is going to be about?
No.
Oh, okay. Just wasn't sure if you were like kind of hinting or segueing into something else there.
No, I mean, fuck, we're only half our normal runtime here, so
we are. Apparently, this is.
We've got seasonal creep on last call. It's coming too early.
Well, is there anything else that we need to touch upon? Is anything? Is there any bee in your bonnets over there? To use a very, very contemporary phrase.
How about beers that you're happy to see arrive early?
Celebration all the time. Seeing people on Twitter the last couple days being like, I got my 12-pack of cans. The first year that they've ever put this into cans, which is exciting. But I'm like, I need that now. And I remember the first time seeing it last year was right around election time. So I have a feeling like we're getting closer to being able to see it down here. But I love seeing Oktoberfests come out and fest beers and all of that. I made a little joke on Twitter this weekend. I was at a little resort with my wife to have like a little one last night without our dog before the kids come, and the pool bar they had on the menu seasonal IPA. Ask your waiter for description, and I go, what's the seasonal IPA? And she goes, Oktoberfest. And I was like, sold. Uh,
Which place was this?
Marriott Ocean Point on Singer Island.
That is the perfect example of every craft beer menu outside of a craft beer bar.
Yes. Because they also they had Sam Adams Boston Lager, Sam Adams Seasonal, and then Seasonal IPA. And I could see that there was a tap handle that had IPA written on it, but I couldn't quite tell what it was. So I was like, what's the Seasonal IPA? And she just goes, without skipping a beat, Oktoberfest. And I'm like, I'll have one of those, please.
I think if there's one seasonal beer that I wish was year-round, it'd be a Marzen. There's nothing, to me, fall about a Marzen. It's just a nice malty lager that I can drink a shit ton of that I really, really enjoy. So, yeah, selfishly, when I see that beer come out from Sam Adams, I mean, I think, listen, there are better examples of Marzens than Sam Adams Oktoberfest. But I think as far as a commercial beer that I can get at every single grocery store down here, it's really exciting to see. And I love having that beer available to me. And that style could just be called Marzen. Of course, the American public would never understand it, and it would never catch on. But if you just put out a really nice malty lager year round, you'd have a friend in me, to quote a random Pixar movie.
You mean Randy Newman?
It wasn't a Pixar movie, Mike. Are you debating me on that?
Pulling back the curtains a little bit here. I was having a conversation with my boss a few weeks ago, and I was saying like, hey, next year I would like to make like a fest beer or like something for like we make a lot of lager, and I was like, I want to do Oktoberfest bigger. I want to make a fest beer of some sort. And he's like, well, we can't make a Marzen. Like our base lager is an amber lager that has characteristics of a Marzen already. And this is our best selling beer. We sell a lot of it. And just to reiterate kind of what it's not a Marzen. It's also not a Vienna lager, but it has those characteristics and we sell a shit ton of it year round. And you can drink those types of beers year round. And I absolutely agree with you. Marzens are probably like of these seasonal styles, like the ones that I'm like, God, I wish this was around more. But like fest beer is something that I've just learned about over the last few years, being like I've heard people kind of refer to them as like super Hellas's, or they just don't have as much, I guess, Munich in them, so they're not as dark. And that's what this Green Bench one is. And I think that it's fantastic. You get some of that bready, biscuity, malty characteristics in a lighter colored beer. And I could drink this all the fucking time, not just during the fall.
Joel, you asked a question. Was there a beer that you'd like to see year round?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I really like the Sam Adams Oktoberfest. It was my go-to every year. I totally agree that there are definite better examples, but like you said, commercially, it's serviceable and perfectly good and available everywhere. The one I tried this season, unfortunately, came off what I can only describe as a dirty draft line at a local sports bar chain that rhymes with Muffies. Yeah, it wasn't good, and it was 2 for 1. So when they brought my second one, I was like, "Oh fuck!" But yeah, I enjoy it, and I do get excited about Celebration, but I'm just not as much of a hophead as I used to be. So I got to lean towards the malty.
No, it's
Mike, was I cutting you off there?
no. I wanted to stick on the Oktoberfest Marzen loving and ask a follow-up question, but go ahead.
You mentioned a sports bar that you didn't really mention that rhymes with the thing you said. Now we're just getting off on tangents, and I'm very comfortable with this. Our listeners will not be. But when one of those locations opened up in Delray Beach, they had a extensive craft menu, and they had 2-for-1 late night, and we would go over there. I mean, for weeks in a row, we went there every single night or every other night. I remember they had Stone Smoked Porter.
I was just going to say, I know they had that.
And I loved that beer. Stone Smoked Porter was one of those beers that every time I saw it, I drank it, and I adored it. A smoked beer, and that was just so well balanced. And it was Stone is a massive brewery. At that time, they were new to Florida, so we weren't getting them on a regular basis, so it was new to me. And I know at this point, maybe they're not, as crafty as some people think, but that was a beer that I loved. And I don't know if it was a seasonal or it even ties into anything we're talking about, but I've been thinking a lot about, and I think about Celebration, I think about Sandman's Oktoberfest, I think about all these great beers that I just don't have nearly often enough. And I go, man, Stone Smoked Porter was freaking good.
I remember that when you said Delray Beach, extensive craft selection, I'm like, they had Stone Smoked Porter for the longest time, and I feel like you and I probably drank majority of the one keg that they probably had.
Most likely, yeah.
But I want to hop back to the Marzen loving real quick. Do you have a preference, a favorite one that you like, Joel?
I don't know. It put me on the spot here. I wasn't really expecting to answer that.
You already mentioned like the Sam. I think we can all agree that the Sam Oktoberfest is pretty good. It's not the best, but I mean, we're definitely drinking it. That's what I had one this weekend. I was like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in my wheelhouse of like styles that I like the simplicity, but I also enjoy that sort of nurturing kind of malty character to it. In the same way I described brown ales many episodes ago. I'm struggling to think of one offhand right now, but
Kevin.
What?
I'm cutting you off. I'm going to Kevin.
Listen, you have the classic ones. You have the Spaten. You have several German.
Surly Fest.
What's that?
Okay.
Surly Fest.
I seem to remember, and this might just be my own fever dream. I think Sierra Nevada makes a good Oktoberfest beer.
Yeah,
that I remember really, really enjoying. One of the ones that I really have enjoyed in the past.
And Sierra Nevada's is a fest beer over a Marzen.
Well, this is one that I actually haven't had in a long time, but Great Lakes makes a really, really good Oktoberfest. It's not available down here in South Florida, but I remember drinking it plenty in the past. And then, just a lot of like local breweries doing their Oktoberfest beer. Whether they're brew pubs locally in Florida, just enjoying that style.
The first Oktoberfest that I ever had and fell in love with the style, or like it was Spaten's, and I just was like, this is so flavorful, this is so amazing, and then was like trying to find it in like January. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm screwed. I can't find this. But I do love a lot of those classics like Hacker Shore and Paulaner as well. I had Shiner's Marzen this year and thought that it was very good and really enjoyed that. That's those two styles, like the Marzen and the Fest beer. I know they're two very different styles, but they get all clumped together into this whole Oktoberfest thing. I'm just, I guess, a lager person nowadays. I just enjoy drinking a good, well-made lager of any real style and variety.
Listen, man, I'm with you on that.
And I love that's a trend that's going on with beer right now that I'm all fucking for. Like hazy IPAs, like yeah, I enjoy a well-made hazy, but I'm not all in on that. And pastry stouts and sours and like kettle sours with shit tons of fruit in them, like they're a dime a dozen. But holy fuck, that people are making lagers and making really good lagers, and the breweries who have been making lagers for a long time are getting some praise is fucking amazing. Like seeing people talk about Dovetail and Metropolitan and Jack's Abbey and like all these lager Chuckanut, and seeing people talk about them in such high praise now because of things they've been doing for fucking ever is awesome. And learning about different pouring styles and different just insanely small nuance to this style of beer that people never really gave a shit about 5 years ago because it takes too long and we're not gonna do that shit. But like just following Notch Brewing Company on Instagram has been so fucking cool, and learning about these different Czech lagers that are out there that I never knew about and want to experiment with and find out more about them.
I'm glad you brought up Metropolitan because when you asked me about Oktoberfests, I completely just brain farted on theirs. I had theirs with coffee on Nitro when I was there in late 2019. Absolutely fantastic.
We had Pete on or Peter, on the show last year, and he was telling us about how much fucking Oktoberfest they make there. And I don't remember the number, but listening to him at the time, it was just insane how much Oktoberfest they make. And for a brewery that makes fucking all lagers, and like he said, we make a Kolsch, it's an ale, but it's lagered too. So like all the time that goes into those tanks and for every single beer that they make is impressive. We lost Kevin, by the way.
No, really?
Yeah. So that's why I was just trying to hang on to this for as long as we possibly can. I've added him back into the call, so hopefully he will come back in here and rejoin us unless something fucking happened.
Well, he has lost all last call privileges.
Yeah, it's saying he's unavailable. So Kevin definitely wins this week's little technical difficulties thing award that we give out. And
where is Nugget? I haven't heard a peep.
Great question. I'm very surprised about that because he's stayed home 2 days in a row, which never happens during a weekday. Normally there's like doggy daycare, stay home, doggy daycare, stay home. Because if he stays home 2 days in a row, he gets way too amped up. And during dinner, he was way amped up, but he seems to have just settled into hanging out. Kevin's computer died, so I don't think that he's going to be back for this episode.
That means his recording may be lost, correct?
It's potential. But I do know that newer versions of Audacity have some damage control, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Disaster recovery involved in that. So we'll just keep on going on with this as if that's going to work. And where are we at on time? Let's go with the last
53.
calls.
Yeah.
So, for anyone new and joining us, last call is the point in the show to where we just give each other an unspecified amount of time to voice our opinion or just take some time to talk about whatever we want, unopposed, unobjected. No one can chime in later on and say anything to it. So, with that, Joel, what's your last call?
Throughout the 2 weeks between recordings, I think of 10,000 last calls because my brain is always just reacting to something that I'm experiencing or witnessing or seeing. And sometimes I just call an audible right in the middle of the show. And I'm going to throw away whatever the fuck else I was going to talk about and respond to something you said earlier about the impending parenthood and how scary it is. Yes, it certainly is. I've done it twice now. You're doing 2 in one shot with your twins. So that sounds even more terrifying, being your first time out. But I don't want you to worry too much. I've really tried to stress that you just need to live in each moment and appreciate every second because it goes by so fast. And yes, it is hard work and sleepless nights and financially draining and all of that, but there's also a lot of great stuff to it as well. And it's that kind of stuff you got to savor. And there is an entire industry hell bent on profiting from your fear and safety concerns. And we went nuts the first time out. I mean, we had the fucking plastic plugs in all the outlets and the extra door locks and the whole shit. And we were in some class that was trying to scare the hell out of us by saying like, oh, the little pull down screens on the back seat that you could for like extra kind of tint, next to the baby seat in the back seat of the car. Well, if you get into an accident, that could become a projectile. And I mean, these fucking people were like straight up trying to sell like canine cages that you would have in a police canine unit so that if you were to get into an accident, a can of soup from your groceries in the back seat wouldn't come flying forward and smash your baby in the face. Now, I'm sure Anthony Jeselnik would love that kind of thing, but the chances of that are very unlikely. But there was a good book I read on a lot of this stuff called Bye Bye Baby, which is spelled B-U-Y, all about the industry meant to scare you and also make you think. There was a lot of that like baby Einstein bullshit in there, and what a scam that was. But I don't want you to worry too much. I think you guys are going to do great. You're great people, and you're going to have a wonderful family. And believe me, I think I would be worried too for you, but I have nothing but the utmost confidence in you guys.
Well, thank you. I feel like you talked about some of this on the show before, but I know we don't respond. But I feel like I've heard that story about the
book,
and the thing in the car. I thought I heard you say that on the show before, but or it just could have been over beers. But so this was actually supposed to be my last call last episode, but we decided to do like storytelling about our previous brewery. We're just going back to that now. And I wanted to talk about just real quick season 2 of Ted Lasso. I saw a lot of people who didn't like it, and because it didn't follow the same formulaic feel good thing of the first season. And it's like, why should it? It's about a story and character development, and things move. Like people are like, oh, it was a little depressing and sad. Yeah, because that's how stories go. Season 1 was fantastic as a feel-good thing. But how about the fact that they took us for a ride in season 2 and took the person that we hated the most and made us love them, and the person that we loved probably one of the most and made us hate them by the end of the season. It's fucking good story writing, good storytelling. I think that it's a fantastic show. And if you just are looking for feel-good stuff all the time, then just watch fucking PBS, because that's for children's stuff. Like, this is storytelling, story writing. Like, there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel bad. And we know that season 3, which is going to be the last one, is going to make us feel good again by the end of it. And we have that to look forward to. You're down on Ted Lasso season 2? I don't know what to fucking tell you. You don't like good storytelling, maybe. Sorry, friend of the show's wife. We'll talk about that after the show. But, Joel, you have anything you want to plug?
You can catch me and Kevin at Barrel Amongst Brewing in Boca Raton. I'm Florida DUH Brewer on Instagram and Joel Brews on Twitter. Yeah, that's it.
You can follow me at Mike Loves Beer on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow the show at Mike. No, I'm not the show. At United We Drink on Twitter, United We Drink Pod on Instagram. You can subscribe to the show and listen to us on any of the major podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, wherever. If we're not on your podcast app of choice, let me know, and I will do my best to get us over on there. You can support the show financially by checking out some of our sponsors and buying stuff from them, whether that be Liquid Death or Death Wish or More Death. There's a whole lot of death over there, but there's also stuff that's not death. UnitedWeDrink.com/sponsors. Also have our web store, UnitedWeDrink.com/store, where you can get a shirt, sticker, button, and support the show. Kevin probably was going to say something very poignant in his last call and plug Barrel of Monks, because that's what he does. For him and Joel, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Hope that you had a great Halloween, because this comes out after Halloween. Ooh, spooky. Cheers.
Cheers.